series of practices that can be done individually, or they can be done as layers of experience. So, for example, the first practice we just did was arriving. The next practice we might choose to do is just be present to our physical experience of sitting and grounding. And so in my book, so my latest book, that actually the book that after the one that Bud mentioned, my latest book, which came out last autumn, is called A Field Guide to Nature Meditation, 52 Mindfulness Practices for Joy, Wisdom, and Wonder. And pretty much all of what I'm teaching today is in that book. And you can, if you're interested, you can look up that as future resource. But so in that book and in my teaching generally, this next practice I teach, and again, I'm just going to give you a short sort of vignette version of it, is what I call meditating. It's a grounding meditation, grounding like a tree. So one of the nice things about meditating in nature is there's a lot of great metaphors or mirrors for how we can, for qualities that we can cultivate within ourselves. And one of those important qualities, I think, in this era that we're living in, that is very fast, busy, complex, stressful, is learning how to ground, learning how to center ourselves, right? Who doesn't get busy and wound up and stressed at work, home, in life? And so one practice that can be helpful is to ground. And we can do that because our body is not separate from the earth and is always in touch with the ground. And we can draw on the examples of mountains, of rocks, of trees particularly, that are very grounded, rooted, literally. And often we feel rootless because we're busy spinning and we're up in our heads. And so the idea of this practice is to learn how to bring that energy, attention down into our bodies, into particularly our feet, our sit bones, our legs that are in contact with the chair, with the ground, as a way to just steady ourselves. And this practice is particularly helpful when you're stressed and you're anxious, when you're about to maybe go into a difficult meeting, when you're about to give a presentation, or any time that you feel ungrounded. Okay, so again, we'll take some time we'll take about 5 minutes. So I can invite you again to close your eyes. And again, as you close your eyes, you might notice how that increases your interoception, your awareness of your internal experience. And so turning your attention to your physical experience of your body. And in particular, bringing awareness into your feet, and have both feet, if you're sitting on a chair, both feet firmly on the ground. So feeling the entire sole of your feet touching the ground. And if you happen to be sitting on the floor in a meditation posture, cross-legged or kneeling, then just feel the lower half of your leg on the ground. And whether you're sitting outside, literally on the ground, sitting on a lawn or on a deck, or you're in your house or office, we're still on the ground. We're rooted by gravity, connected to the earth. And so feel that sense of contact, pressure, of your feet, your sit bones, buttocks, perhaps your thighs, wherever the body is in touch with the ground. And maybe some of you are lying down. If you're lying down, feel the entire back body in contact with the ground. And then keep turning your attention to feeling your feet, legs, buttocks in contact with the chair, that's in contact with the floor, contact with the ground. And you may imagine your body rooting in the same way that a tree has roots. We don't literally root into the ground, but when we bring our attention and therefore our energy down to the feet, to the legs, notice if there's any quality of grounding, earthing, rootedness. Feel the earth, as it were, supporting your body. Feeling gravity drawing the body downward. And maybe you even visualize a tree or a mountain or a large rock that you know that embodies that quality of feeling rooted or grounded. Maybe sensing the legs like trunks of a tree. And of course, naturally, with any practice that we do today or any time, there's a chosen focus, in which this case grounding, sensing the body, relaxing the belly, feeling the body in touch with the surface of the chair, the floor, the ground. And the attention wanders, notice that, bring it back. Wanders away, comes back. Notice sounds, come back. Notice thoughts, come back to just sensing the body on the earth, resting on the earth. And then just taking a moment before we end this practice, just notice, how does that feel? How does it feel to be grounded, rooted in that way? And then opening your eyes. And again, just take a moment, and those of you who can, if you can write any comments in the chat, or not the chat, in the Q&A. What do you notice when you shift your attention downwards, sensing your feet, legs, sensing the sense of quality of groundedness?
I can say, Mark, from my
Yes,
experience,
please, Bud. Yeah, great.
yeah, that I was feeling quite scattered before, a little bit stressed out because of the technical difficulties. I'd lost power and all that. And I feel that the arriving practice was wonderful. I was actually outside on the patio for a couple of minutes, but this really stabilized my attention and my mood, and really, I feel so much more centered, I guess is the word. So, yeah.
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. I appreciate you sharing. And you know what's interesting about all these practices, they don't take very long, right? It's really a few minutes of
Mm-hmm.
interrupting the being busy. Oh, I've got to do another email. I've got to get ahead. I've got to keep going, keep going. And then, oh, let me just take a moment. And it could be a minute. I mean, we did four minutes or so, but it doesn't take much to shift the attention out of the worrying. Not easy,
Mm-hmm.
but doable into, in this case, body, ground. Yeah. And again, doing it, I think outside helps, but doing indoors is also fine. Because our attention, energy follows attention. And so since attention is mostly here, our energy goes up here, which is why we bring the attention down. It's grounding. You know? So another one person said feeling very supported. Another person said legs feel stable and heavy, but in a calming way. Right. Again, we tend to not feel our legs or feet unless they're hurting, unless we're exercising. But actually, the lower half of the body generally tends to be a kind of calmer, grounded place. Yeah. So, okay. So, continuing the layering experience. So, we've begun with arriving, and then we shifted to grounding, and now we are going to expand into, again, something that's very simple and accessible, which is breathing, something we're all doing, something we know very well. And yet when we do that outside, or we do that with a nature orientation, which I'll explain what that is in a minute, there's a different quality to it. So most people, I mean, we all breathe. We're mostly not that aware of our breathing unless we're out of breath, we're exercising, or we're having, breathing issues, health issues. But breathing, just like the last practice, can be incredibly grounding, centering, focusing. And when we breathe outside or with relationship with nature, it brings in a really, I think, a beautiful dimension. When we're outside, so right now, as you can see, my house has got a lot of trees around it. And then for some of you, like where Bud is, when we sit outside or we open the window or the door, and there's some awareness of the outdoors and whatever nature's around us, what we can very easily tune into is that we tend to sort of go around with this idea that I'm very separate, very isolated. I've got my house or my body or whatever, and it's very, and the people in the world are sort of out there. It's very much an other. And but actually, what being out in nature teaches us, reminds us, is we're very connected, very interwoven, and very interdependent with life. Right? There's an ethos about this sort of idea of a rugged individual being independent like an island, but the reality is we're utterly interconnected with life. And the easiest way to think about that and to experience that is breath. Right? We breathe, 5, 6, maybe 10 times a minute. And we're utterly dependent on that oxygen, right? Don't breathe for a few minutes. We don't live very long. And where is that oxygen coming from? It's coming from trees and grasses and plants and plankton, primarily photosynthesizing, releasing oxygen. And so that releasing of oxygen, you could say, metaphorically, is the trees and the plants exhaling. And our inhale is breathing in air and taking in that oxygen. And as we exhale, we breathe out higher concentration of carbon dioxide. At some point, somewhere in time and place, that CO2 that we breathe out, maybe at some point, maybe even within this hour that we're together, be reabsorbed by the leaves, grasses, plants around you. And that sounds poetic, but it's also, there's a reality that we are in this exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen, as are the trees. And so when I'm breathing outside, I have an awareness and appreciation that the trees and the grasses and the plants are actually literally providing more oxygen, which is, essential and also delightful to breathe in. We can, one of the most distinctive things when we step outside, even if you live in a city, is we notice the air generally feels fresher and probably more oxygenated than the room that we've been sitting in for 8 hours without ventilation. And so we can bring that into our mindfulness practice. And so we're not just breathing and being mindful of breathing, but we're breathing, realizing that every breath connects us in some way with every other living, breathing organism, including the cyanobacteria that began photosynthesizing 2.5 billion years ago, started to create a more oxygen-rich atmosphere, and connects us with all the photosynthesizing life on the earth: forests, grasslands, plants, jungles, plankton, oceans. Okay, so we'll do a slightly longer practice of breathing, and I'll weave in some awareness reflection that we are breathing with nature. Okay, so if you need to take a moment to stretch, because we've been sitting for 45 minutes, please do. Whatever is helpful for you to, feel comfortable. You might want to stand for a moment. You might want to stretch a little. You might need to take a little refreshment, a glass of water like I'm doing. Okay, so again, finding a comfortable posture where you can sit relatively upright. If you're on the chair, you might have your hands on your legs or in your lap. Try not to slouch too much if you're on a very comfortable chair, try to sit upright, like a dining chair or office chair is better. Ideally, if you can, sit outside or sit with an open window, open door, so you're having a sense of fresh air. And then as you close your eyes, or if sitting with the eyes closed is not comfortable or you're too sleepy, just have the gaze lowered so you're not looking at the screen or not looking around. And then as you take your seat and just become aware of your posture. It's like you do the arriving practice for just a few seconds, like just noticing, okay, what's present now? What am I hearing? What am I sensing in the body? How am I feeling grounded, connected through my feet to the earth, through my legs to the earth, through my sit bones to the chair to the earth? And inviting a quality of relaxation in your body. So relaxing your eyes, your cheeks, your jawbone. I open the mouth a little just to release the jaw. You might roll your shoulders to provide a sense of openness and spaciousness in the chest. Invite the belly to soften. And then without doing anything, without changing anything, just notice how you're breathing. Notice how the body breathes itself. You don't need to control it or manipulate it or improve on it. And just notice this whole cycle of breath. And you might notice whether you're breathing deeply or shallow. Whether the breath feels tense or relaxed, long or short. And then being curious about where you feel your breath. You notice it more in the nostrils as the air comes in, the cooler air, or in the throat. Or you can feel your chest lifting, expanding, or the belly moving in and out as the breath comes in and out, or the chest inflating, deflating, air passing through the nostrils. Just be curious, where do you feel the breath? Not thinking about the breath, not visualizing it, breathing and aware of breathing. And let your attention focus on a place you feel the breath most clearly. It might be the initial sense of the breath at the nose, maybe the chest expanding, belly moving. And be curious, as if you'd never felt a breath. What would it be like if this was your first breath? What happens? How does the body breathe itself? What are all the sensations that you feel with an inhale or sense with the exhale? Is there a pause between breaths? And as you breathe in, be aware of the quality of the air. Is it warm or cool? Is it fragrant or not? Does it have a fragrance, a smell? Notice how the breath can change, sometimes deep, sometimes shallow. And as you breathe in, have some awareness that you're breathing in the air that's infused with oxygen, released from the trees and the plants and grasses around you, from the forests nearby. Breathing in the exhale of trees and plants. And as you exhale, breathing out more carbon dioxide that's getting reabsorbed at some point by plant kingdom, forests. And as you keep sensing and feeling the breath, most of the attention is just feeling this miracle of breath that is life. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Breathing with nature. And each time you notice your attention has wandered, got preoccupied with a thought, a memory, a plan, an image, notice that. Not a problem, just a habit. Releasing the thought and returning attention to what am I feeling now as I breathe, as I inhale, as I exhale. And feeling the quality of the air as you inhale and how the inhale has an energizing, invigorating quality in the body, brightening the mind. And the exhale, relaxing, calming, releasing quality. And in the last minute or so, no matter how much the attention wanders, training practice is just to keep returning over and over, even if your attention's drawn to sounds or other sensations or feelings or thoughts or images. Notice that it takes only a moment to return. Breathing in, we're breathing in. Breathing out, we're breathing out. Breathing with nature. And as you bring this practice to a close, noticing if there's any quality of gratitude or appreciation for the fact that what's allowing you to inhale and take in life-giving oxygen is literally the plant kingdom, the forests, the trees, the grasses that have been creating this rich, oxygen-rich atmosphere. And as we end the practice and you open your eyes and you look around, and again, maybe what you see out your window or in your garden are trees or grasses or plants. And some awareness that, we literally in some way or other breathe together. Even the plant, I have this orchid on my desk, and they say really good to have plants in the house because the plants are like air conditioning systems. They take in the stale air, they take in carbon dioxide, they release more oxygen, and that's literal. Again, when I say that, I'm always aware that people often associate meditation with woo, with new age philosophy and whatnot. And I'm pointing to these, I'm poetically to saying we're breathing with nature. But it's also true scientifically that there is at some point an exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between any breathing organism and any photosynthesizing organism. So again, just opening up for comments, observations, questions. What do you notice when you bring awareness to your breath? What happens just in terms of your attention? just as we brought attention to our senses, to our grounding through our body, now we bring attention to our breath, which is this very accessible experience, and is also a great mindfulness mental training exercise, because we see how hard it is for us to sustain attention. Our attention, we maybe feel an in-breath, maybe an out-breath, and then gone, back to work, back to an email, back to a conversation, back to what's for dinner, back to who knows, where am I going to hike today after this call? So feel free to share in any way, either questions about anything I've been saying, any observations about any practices, in this case breathing, but with an emphasis on some awareness of breathing in relationship to the natural world. And Bud, feel free to share anything, since you have the mic in a way, because everybody else doesn't have access to talking.
Well, and I would say, folks, just give us a word or two what that was like. My comment was that I've done breath meditations many times, but I like the imagery and the feeling of breathing with nature, of breathing, of realizing, not taking it for granted, realizing how life-sustaining it is. And so it's, as I look out my windows, fortunately, I have a nice view here. I can see it's a little bit breezy today, and it looks like the trees are breathing. So it's beautiful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it is very literal, it's poetic, but it's also literal. Yeah.
And we're connected, the connected part of it.
Right. Intimately.
Yeah.
Which is why we want to hang on to our forests and our gardens. And I see I have a very keen meditator who wants to come in here, who's teaching us about, hey, I'm breathing, I'm sensing, I'm
yeah.
Likes to steal the show. That's Chester, by the way. That's one of my cats. He was very curious about the two raccoons who were up in the tree, who were quite large and ominous looking.
I bet.
Yeah.
There is one comment so far.
Breathing brings relaxation to my shoulders, which is where I hold my stress. Right. So when we breathe with awareness, there is something about how it affects our stress, our tension. When we all hold places in our body, jaw, shoulders, throat, belly, hands, and we can do a few things with the breath. One, with just breathing can help us come into the present moment out of our thoughts, which are usually creating the stress. Sometimes we can breathe into the very place we're feeling stress, like breathing into the shoulder stress, or breathing into the tight belly, or breathing into the pain that we might be feeling physically. People are probably wondering, am I going to open the window to my poor Chesterfield cat? He is okay. There's a window right next door that he can jump in. That's his cat flap. And so don't believe that he's like this poor neglected cat. He just likes to get my attention. Talk about focused attention. Animals are great teachers about focused attention. All right, so we have time for perhaps one more practice. We're finishing at 15 after, right?
Yep, we have up until that time. I'm sure that'd be great. If you have time for another one, that'd be terrific.
Of course. Yeah. So I was aware in the info about the workshop that we also talked about how meditation in nature is a doorway to joy and I think delight and wonder. I think the words we used. And that's very true. And it's one of the main reasons we have gardens and we have parks and we go to the beach and we hike in the woods and we go to the mountains and we, go to the lake in the summer. is that nature is, it's a balm, it's soothing, it's calming, but it also is a balm for the heart. We feel, delight at watching a sunrise or a sunset. We feel joy at seeing fireflies or newborn deer, fawns in the woods, or right where I am right now, spring is just going off, and there's just California poppies and lupins, just buttercups, just coating the hillsides. It's quite glorious here. And given the stressful times that many of us live in, it's very important for us to also pay attention to that which brings joy or delight or beauty or wonder. Our own mind and the media has a negativity bias. We tend to focus on what's wrong, what's negative, what's problematic, which is necessary. Just like when doctors diagnosing a problem, we want to focus on what the problem is. But we also want to pay attention to what's beautiful and what brings joy and delight, whether it's a child's smile or dogs playing or a starlit sky, or a plant that we've seen growing in our garden. And because when we feel delight or joy, it's very nourishing for our system, for our well-being, lowers our stress levels and all of that. So I probably don't need to tell you all that, but what I notice with students is I work with a lot of students who are going through hard times, etc. Any joy or smile or delight or happiness or contentment or peace, because we need to be cultivating that as much as we need to be working with the stress and the difficulty. And the reason why nature is such a great ally is because for most of us, most of the time, just going outdoors is uplifting. We feel space because it's more spacious. We feel joy because there's a lot of beauty. We feel relaxed because it's calm, right? So there's a practice that we're not really going to do, but I want to give you instructions for it. And it's something you can do after the session. So in my book and in my work, Awaken the Wild work, there's a series of practices I teach called meandering. Meandering, what I like to call in England bimbling, is basically just like you might do in your garden or in a park or in some tide pools or in a woodland that you're familiar with. You just let yourself meander and walk around, but which is different than a hike, different than a focus, kind of like I'm gonna get all my steps in and beat my time around the lake. This is a slow, mindful walk, like what we've been doing, where you're sensing your body, you're feeling your feet on the ground, you're aware of your breath, you're aware of your movements of your body, but particularly, just like the arriving practice, you're very grounded in your senses. So you're aware of what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're smelling, what you're touching. And touching is really important. I like to give people a lot of permission when you're outside. Touch the bark of a tree, feel the petal of the flower, touch the dew in the grass, smell a blossom, like put your nose up to the flower or into the whatever is fragrant, maybe it's mint or sage or and the idea is to turn your attention as you're meandering, as you're being called, allured around the landscape. Let yourself be drawn to whatever draws you. It might be the color. It might be grass. It might be the light in the canopy of a beech forest. It might be the sound of songbirds. It might be anything, the warm sun on your skin. And the idea is you just meander, oriented moment to moment to whatever's drawing your attention, in particular, whatever draws your attention that brings joy or delight or curiosity or happiness or peacefulness. Like there's a great line from a poet, John O'Donoghue, who says, "Draw alongside the silence of stone until its calmness can claim you." So that might be your meander. Like draw what has calmness in it. The poet Mary Oliver, New England poet, she says, on a poem called Mindful, she says, "Every day I see or hear something that more or less kills me with delight, that leaves me like a needle in the haystack of light." Right? She was a poet and she was a mindful observer of nature. And because of that, she had a lot of happiness. So we're not going to meander right now because we only have 3 minutes left, but just take this next 30 seconds and just using your eyes, look around and what draws you in and what brings delight. Like for me, it's looking at these orchids or my Chester cat. Maybe for you, it's sky or sunlight or form of something or the smell of something or the sound of a bird or wind. Okay, so that's meandering with your eyes, and then we can meander with our body, walking, strolling, touching, smelling, tasting, lying down, standing. So I invite you, if you have time after this workshop or after you finish work, to go into a garden or even around your neighborhood. I mean, most neighborhoods have trees or gardens, plants, flowers, blossoms. Or go further into a park or woodland or beach or whatever you live nearby, and meander with this sensory awareness. So being mindful in nature is to be aware with the senses, aware with using our body and its senses to connect us with the present moment through the senses, to connect with the sensory environment around us. And the more you do that, the more you're in the present. The more you're in the present, the more mindful you are. And the more mindful in the present you are, we tend to feel more relaxed, more peaceful, more calm, more grounded, more connected, more joy, more well-being. So that's what I have to say about all of that. But I'm aware we have a minute left. I'm going to ask people if you would like to just share any closing comments, anything that spoke to you in this in this workshop, and lovely to be with you all. And I hope these practices were useful. And you can find out more about my work through, as Bud said, my website markcoleman.org or my awakenthewild.com website.